you ready to read an article from the BBC with me? When you learn English with the news, it's a great way to learn advanced vocabulary, complex sentence structure, advanced grammar, and natural pronunciation in a really fun and engaging way. And make sure you watch right until the end because I'm going to read the article in full at the very end so you can practice along with your pronunciation. And I'll also share the link where you can download the PDF of the lesson that we reviewed today. Welcome back to JForrest English Training. Of course, I'm Jennifer, and this is your place to become a fluent, confident English speaker. Let's get started. Welcome to our article. In this article, we're talking about the death of Pelé, one of the greatest footballers of all time, or the greatest, perhaps in your opinion, footballer of all time. So let's start with the headline. Thank you, King. Brazil lights up in honor of Pelé. So King is what a lot of people refer to Pelé as. They also called him King. So if you see that, it also refers to Pelé in this instance. Okay, let's go to our article. Brazil has woken up to its first day without footballing legend Pelé. So here we have an irregular verb conjugation. Now notice this is a phrasal verb because we have the verb and the preposition up, woke up. Now the base verb is to wake up. And then in the past, it's woke up. And then in the participle form, it's woken up. So let's take a look at some different sentences. So for example, today, what time did you wake up? Now, if it's today and the action is complete, what verb tense do you need in your response? Today, what time did you wake up? I woke up at 6 a.m. I always wake up at 6 a.m. I've woken up at 6 a.m. for the last 10 years. So notice, past simple, my present simple verb, and you know it's the present simple because I have my adverb of frequency. Now here it's in the third form, and it's in the present perfect verb tense because it's an action that started in the past and continues until now. So for this one, if it's he, don't forget you have to conjugate. He always wakes up. And this one, he has as a contraction. He's woken up at 6 a.m. for the last 10 years. Now, you can wake up to something. This is a common sentence structure. You might say, today I woke up to the sound of car alarms. Or today I woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee. So it's a little more poetic way of saying this, and we often use it with our senses, things we see, things we hear, things we smell. I probably not taste because you probably wouldn't wake up tasting something, but I guess it's possible theoretically. So notice you have your phrasal verb wake up, and remember if you need to conjugate it, so he always wakes up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee. So what about you? What do you wake up to? If you're a parent, you might say, I always wake up to my children screaming in the other room. So that could be, I wake up to my children jumping on me, screaming, yelling, things like that, things your kids do. So this is a very common expression. So here, Brazil has woken up to its first day. That is the something in this case. In my example, it was screaming children. Its first day without footballing legend Pele. Let me include without because without is a preposition. So grammatically, what do you need if your verb follows a preposition? You need a gerund verb because it's a preposition. So plus gerund. So you might say, for example, using our expression we just learned, today, for the first time, I woke up without hearing my kids screaming. Today, for the first time, I woke up without, and then you need a gerund verb, without hearing my kids screaming. So that could be a good sentence structure to practice because you also combine it with a preposition and your gerund verb. All right, let's continue on. The king, who won 3 World Cups and was widely considered the greatest footballer of all time, died at the age of 82 in Sao Paulo on Thursday. All right, widely, this is an adverb, and it means by many. So he was considered by many the greatest footballer. He was widely considered. Now notice the article does not say considered as. This is a mistake that many native speakers make. We include as after considered when in fact it is not necessary. So you do not need as here. Now, many native speakers make this mistake, and you might hear native speakers, so you might wonder, why are they using as? Mainly because when we use regarded, we do use as. Regarded as the greatest footballer. But with considered, we don't need as. So considered the greatest footballer. So notice that difference there. So coming back to widely, remember widely is an adverb that means by many. So you could say English is widely spoken around the world, which is why you're learning it, right? English is widely spoken around the world. Or you might say that's a widely held belief. So I didn't specify what the belief is. Maybe the belief is that Pele was the greatest footballer of all time. That's a widely held belief. It's a belief held by many. So notice the placement of our adverb because we put it right after the verb to be. English is widely spoken. Let's continue on. Overnight, Pele's face shone on buildings across the South American nation, and landmarks were lit up in his memory. Okay, here, shone. This means illuminated on. So this is the past simple of the verb shine, like the sun shines. So our infinitive is to shine. Our base verb is, of course, shine. For example, the sun shines brightly. And then the past form is either shined or shone. Now notice the pronunciation is the exact same as shone. They're exactly the same. Shone, own, shone. So yesterday, the sun shined or shone brightly. I would probably say in American English, shined is more common, but I do hear shone a lot, so I think it's probably worth knowing that both of them are acceptable. And the third form is only shined. We don't use shone in the third form, just shine. The sun has shined since 9 a.m. Action that started in the past and continues until now. And of course, in this case, we're talking about his face being illuminated. So you could, just like you look up and you see the sun shining, you can see his face shining. So illuminated. His face shone. So that's what that means there. You'll probably more likely use it with the sun, but now you know the different conjugations. Overnight, Pele's face shone on buildings across the South American nation, and landmarks were lit up in his memory. So to be lit up, again, this is another way of saying illuminated. So the bridge had lights on it. Buildings had lights on it. So to be lit up, that's our verb to be there. And then our verb to be is in the past simple. And then you can think of this as illuminated. Okay, fans took to the streets dressed in his iconic number 10 shirt. So this is just an expression. It just means fans left their house and went to the streets. It's just a way of saying it. It's not really that commonly used, but we use it more when there is a mass group of people. So in this case, it's a positive thing because they're going to mourn him. To mourn is when you show respect for somebody who has died, like Pele in this case. So fans took to the streets. A large number of people were on the streets as a group. Now, this is also used in negatives. So you might see this in the news a lot when talking about protests or riots. So for example, you might see thousands of people took to the streets to protest the election results, for example. So thousands of people took to the streets. So you can think of it as gathered as a group in public and usually outside, which is the reference to street because streets are outside. So I'll just add that in public, outside. Let's continue on. Brazil's government has declared 3 days of national mourning. Now let's look at this here because I mentioned it in the last example, to mourn. This is a verb, to mourn. And this is when you pay respect to someone, especially in a death. So you feel sadness, but then usually you express it as well. You express that sadness. So that's to mourn. You could say the world is mourning the death of Pele. Or you could say the world is mourning Pele's death. So notice here, I use the present continuous is mourning because it's an action taking place now. And notice in this case, I put the death of. Now, these two sentences have exactly the same meaning. Pele's death, the death of Pele. The reason why my first example, I chose to use the death of, because we want to emphasize that because that's what mourning is about. It's usually about the death. So I put that first, but you can absolutely put Pele's death as well. Sometimes we refer to someone's death as passing. So you could say the world is mourning the passing of Pele, which means death. Some people don't like using the word death because, oh, it's death, right? It's so negative. So I guess passing sounds nicer, a nicer way of saying it. But in reality, it's the same thing. but you might see this. Let's continue on. Fans started gathering outside Sao Paulo's Albert Einstein Hospital on Thursday afternoon when they heard news of Pele's death. Outside, a banner read, "Eternal King Pele." All right. Started is one of those verbs that is an optional gerund verb. So you have the verb start, and when I say start is a gerund verb, it means the verb that comes next is in the gerund form. Just like we talked about prepositions earlier, without gathering. Okay, so just to use the same verb. Now, you must use without gathering. You cannot say without to gather. You can't use the infinitive because without is a preposition and you must use a gerund verb following prepositions. So this one's correct, this one's wrong. Other verbs in English, there are some optional verbs. So start is one of those verbs. You can use started to gather or started gathering. And in this case, they're both correct. If you want to make it easy on yourself, I would just remember that start is a gerund verb. So start is a gerund verb. Remember, it means that the verb that follows start is in ing form. And that way, it's just easier for you because using the gerund is always correct. It will always sound proper. So you could say, I started going to the gym. I started eating vegetables with every meal. Or to fit with the context of this lesson, I started playing soccer. Sorry. Force of habit, American English, we say soccer. I'll say football. I started playing football. All right. So remember, just to be on the safe side, consider start a gerund verb. But if you're confused why you see it in the infinitive form, just know that it is acceptable to use the infinitive. But to be on the safe side, I recommend using the gerund. All right, let's continue on. Pele had been undergoing treatment for colon cancer since 2021. Knowing his condition was worsening, Brazilians had spent weeks reflecting on his life and legacy. Notice our verb tense in both of these. Had been undergoing. Had spent weeks reflecting. Okay. The reason why it's in the past perfect continuous is because Pele is now dead, right? So they're talking about an action that started in the past, but it is now complete. The action is not taking place anymore because Pele is dead. And they're talking about it taking place before another action. Now, if Pele were still alive, you could say Pele has been undergoing treatment for. And this is he's still undergoing treatment now, which we know is not true because he's dead, right? So that's why, because he's dead, that's why we switch to the past perfect continuous. So this is the past perfect. And this is the present perfect continuous. Let's continue on. The hospital issued a statement confirming his death from multiple organ failure connected to his cancer. Notice here we have our gerund verb. Now you might be wondering, why is this in the gerund? Because think about the sentence structure. We have, here's our subject, the hospital, subject. And then we have our verb. The hospital issued. So this is our verb and it's in the past simple. So we already have our verb. They issued a statement. Now, in this case, we're talking about the action. And the action is in what the statement is doing. So the statement is confirming. So we're just talking about the action. So that's why it's in the gerund form. The hospital issued a statement confirming. So that's why it's in the gerund form. Let's continue on. But in a reflection of his status, the hospital added it shared the suffering felt by the family and everyone over the loss of our beloved king of football. So this is a way the hospital is mourning the loss. Because remember, to mourn means to express sadness over a death, right? So by issuing this statement, they are in fact mourning. The hospital is mourning his death. Okay, let's continue on. One man standing outside the FIESP, I'm not sure if that's pronounced as something, building in Sao Paulo as it displayed a colorful tribute, spoke of the intensity of feeling for Pele. So again, this is another person mourning the loss of, the death of, the passing of, or simply mourning Pele. It is indescribable to say at this moment what we are going through here, the loss. Whittlesey Guimaraes, hopefully I said that right. Whittlesey Guimaraes told Reuters News Agency. So the verb to go through something, this is a phrasal verb because you have go and then you have the preposition through. To go through something, this is always used in a negative context. So to experience something negative or difficult, I would say. And we use this a lot in more of a general context, like I've been going through a tough time since my father's death. So I'm using the present perfect continuous because it started in the past. It continues until now. Since my father's death, I know my keyword is since, and then go through. I've been going through a tough time, a difficult time. You can use tough or difficult. Both of those are very common. And remember, this is negative. To go through something, the something is negative. Our last paragraph. Tributes have poured in from the late footballer, including from Brazil forward Neymar, who said, before Pele, football was only a sport. Okay, to pour in, this is a phrasal verb, and it means to arrive quickly. Now, because think of rain, when it's pouring rain, the rain is coming down really hard. So you can imagine these tributes are arriving, but they're arriving quickly, just like the rain when it's pouring down. So you could say, it's pouring outside, which means it's raining very hard. You could also say, complaints poured in after we canceled the conference. So you canceled the conference and you received a lot of complaints. A complaint is somebody saying something negative. I don't like this. Why did you do this? I'm upset. I'm not happy. That's a complaint, something negative. So arrived quickly, they were received quickly. The complaints poured in. So we generally use this with information that you receive. In this case, the complaints, that's a negative, but tributes are something positive said about someone else, generally after they have died. So tributes have poured in. Tributes have arrived in a large volume and quickly. Tributes have poured in for the late footballer. Now, late in this context is a way of saying the dead footballer. In this case, remember before I said death? Some people don't like saying death, so they change it to passing. In this case, we rarely say the dead footballer. That just seems very abrupt or impolite, just not commonly said. So not commonly said, but that's what it means. The late footballer, that means he's dead. So when you see a sentence like this one, my late uncle was always late, we have the word late twice, but they're two very different meanings. This one means dead, my dead uncle, my uncle who is no longer living. My late uncle was always late, was always arriving after he said he would. So that, of course, is late, but my late uncle, we use a possessive with it because it would be my uncle, right? So I'm using an adjective to describe it, my late uncle. And in this case, the adjective late, which means dead, comes before the person. Whereas here, to be late, you need the verb to be late. So to be late means arriving after this scheduled time, right? So the sentence structure will make it obvious and the context will make it obvious as well. So that's the article. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the article from start to finish so you can focus on my pronunciation and practice along with my pronunciation. So let's do that now. Thank you, King. Brazil lights up in honor of Pelé. Brazil has woken up to its first day without footballing legend Pelé. The King, who won 3 World Cups and was widely considered the greatest footballer of all time, died at the age of 82 in Sao Paulo on Thursday. Overnight, Pelé's face shone on buildings across the South American nation, and landmarks were lit up in his memory. Fans took to the streets dressed in his iconic number 10 shirt. Brazil's government has declared 3 days of national mourning. Fans started gathering outside Sao Paulo's Albert Einstein Hospital on Thursday afternoon when they heard news of Pelé's death. Outside, a banner read, "Eternal King Pelé." Pelé had been undergoing treatment for colon cancer since 2021. Knowing his condition was worsening, Brazilians had spent weeks reflecting on his life and legacy. The hospital issued a statement confirming his death from multiple organ failure connected to his cancer. But in a reflection of his status, the hospital added it shared the suffering felt by the family and everyone over the loss of our beloved king of football. One man standing outside the FIESP building in Sao Paulo, as it displayed a colorful tribute, spoke of the intensity of feeling for Pelé. It is indescribable to say at this moment what we are going through here, the loss, Whittlesey Guimarães told Reuters news agency. Tributes have poured in for the late footballer, including from Brazil forward Neymar, who said before Pelé, football was only a sport. Amazing job with this lesson. Now I've left the link to the PDF where you can review all the vocabulary, the sentence structure, the grammar right in the description. So if you look in the description of this video, you'll see the link. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe. And before you go, make sure you head on over to my website, JForrestEnglish.com, and download your free speaking guide. In this guide, I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. And until next time, happy studying!